Ben. It doesn't just represent the end, though. It really also represents the beginning of an era where the Commonwealth will continue to provide community-based services. And here in Western Massachusetts, we will only be providing services in community settings. To understand, though, the significance of this, I think we must understand a bit of our past and where we've come from, because only then can we remain vigilant and assure that many of the mistakes of the past will not be repeated. Over the past 20 years, the state, families, and the courts have worked together to radically change conditions such that they have really gone 180 degrees. The horrible conditions of the past can be contrasted with today's environment of small family-like settings in the community where people have opportunities to make choices, have relationships with various kinds of people, receive training, participate in meaningful work opportunities, and return to being contributing members of their communities. To fully understand the significance of this, though, I think we have to look at recognizing the accomplishments of those who have worked so hard to get us to this point today. And first, and most importantly, I think we have to recognize the efforts of families. Through their tireless and dedicated efforts, we have found ourselves here today, where everyone in Western Mass with mental retardation who's served by the Commonwealth is served in small, family-like settings. They have been courageous and spoken out for years, for decades, about the necessary changes. They have fought for conditions of improvements. Joined by the voice of people with disabilities, self-advocates, they have demanded that they be provided with healthy and safe environments in which they have the opportunity to grow and prosper. Also, though, the government needs to be recognized, because through the changes in both state and federal systems, with the involvement of Judge Toro, with men like Ben Richie, women like Ruth Sankowitz Mercer, voices have rung out for many, many people, expressing the needs and desires of people with disabilities and demanding change. And here today, we can celebrate a very significant step of that change with the closing of this facility. In addition, though, the people who work in this service system also deserve recognition for their growth and their change and their leadership. We're joined today by leaders like Gunnar Dubois, who's internationally known for his contribution to this field. There have been leaders of the past, like a past Superintendent Bill Jones, who have courageously led some of these changes. But today in Massachusetts, we also have leaders of great stature. Women like Terry O'Hare, who's the last superintendent of the Belchertown State School. Men like Peter Trayers, who were so instrumental in helping people make the transition from this facility out into community settings. Men like Stephen Bradley, who's responsible for developing and providing leadership to the services here in Western Massachusetts. Terry Blanchard, who has so skillfully developed literally hundreds of opportunities for people to move into the community settings. And beyond the department, there's certainly the leadership provided by a vibrant provider community, by strong community advocates, such that together we have all fulfilled the expectations of the past 270 individuals who lived here, such that they have now moved into community settings. By virtually any standards, the Belchertown phase-down and closure is a success. But as a department, we plan to understand fully what we have done here and what we have done with you, such that we can make improvements and continue to provide for community-based opportunities for people who leave large institutional settings such as this. We are committed to repeating this success in other places throughout the Commonwealth. We are joined today by a number of individuals that I have the pleasure of introducing. And one of those is the next speaker, Secretary Charles Baker. Charlie Baker is responsible for the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. His knowledge of mental retardation services goes beyond just that. Prior to joining this administration, he worked in a think tank in Boston that supported the study of services to people with mental retardation in the Commonwealth. And I know that he has personal knowledge through friends of his who have worked in this field. So I'd like to ask all of you today to join with me in welcoming Secretary Baker.
much, Phil. It's obviously a pleasure for me to be here today to share this momentous occasion with you, and I certainly bring greetings from the Governor and Lieutenant Governor, who due to a variety of scheduling conflicts weren't able to come out today. Professor Dubois, how are you? It's always a pleasure. I don't want to spend too much time up here playing the Thank the Academy game, but I do think it's appropriate to thank some people who've been very dedicated and involved in this process. Commissioner Campbell mentioned Terry O'Hare and Ben Richie. I would like to mention Steve Bradley, who's the area director out here, and Mary Rogier, who's the person who oversees housing for the Department of Mental Retardation. This is part of what I think the Weld administration would call an attempt to change the mindset, the culture, and the thinking of the way many of the Health and Human Service agencies in the state operate. What I mean by that is if you go back over recent history, I think it would be fair to say that most people would say we had agencies that operated institutions, and oh, by the way, yeah, we do community services as well. One of the things we're trying to do with the entire facility consolidation process, and by working as aggressively as we can to move resources from institutional settings and into community settings, is to say that many of these agencies ought to be community-based agencies in which institutions are a part of the delivery system that is a community-based delivery system. And I think clearly this is a direction that the Department of Mental Retardation has been moving in for several years. One of the things I should probably do is say that this has been a bipartisan initiative begun by the prior administration and by Mary McCarthy, who was the commissioner prior to Phil Campbell. I guess the final thing I would just say is we've taken very seriously the governor's commitment to equal or better in terms of the movement from facility-based settings to community-based settings, and as a result have hired folks in a number of instances, individual and independent entities, to do analyses and studies of family members and consumers served by various agencies. We actually released a study that was done by the Gerontology Institute at UMass Boston several weeks ago, which was a survey of the folks who had been placed under the Department of Public Health facility consolidation process, which involved the closing of Lakeville, I'm drawing a blank, Lakeville, Rutland, and Cushing State Hospitals. And the results were overwhelmingly positive from both the patients who had been moved in from the family members who had been concerned about their loved ones. And I would say that in this situation as well, there's been a major survey done by an independent research organization of family members and consumers served by the department at Belchertown, and the results from that survey as well have been overwhelmingly positive. That is something we're going to continue to do, to study and survey and measure how folks are doing in new settings as this process continues. And I think to some extent, the final thing I'll say is that one of the things I've learned in my brief 2 years in government is that you don't usually get a heck of a lot of credit for doing something right because people expect you to do something right. And there's a pretty heavy downside to making almost any mistake at all. And the result of that is, because you are very visible and in the public eye, there's a tendency on the part of folks in government to resist change, because change brings attention, and attention brings the possibility of very visible and very public failure. One of the things that I have been awed by in the time that I've worked in state government is the number of folks, both state employees and private agency employees, who aren't afraid of change and who are willing to work aggressively, in many cases under very difficult circumstances with millions of moving parts, to try and get different entities and different agencies and different organizations to work together on behalf of the people that we serve, and to logistically perform some very complicated tasks and activities. And I think clearly one of the things I've been proudest about in the time that I've been in state government is there are a tremendous number of people, all the way down throughout the system, who are willing and able to put what might be personal or individual interests aside, and to work aggressively on behalf of the people that we all think we're in business to serve to accomplish a greater goal and objective. And I think that's the one thing I would want to leave you with today, which is that processes like this and like the public health closings and the mental health consolidation involve literally thousands of people working together under, in many cases, difficult and complicated circumstances, and putting aside, in many cases, their own personal interests in a particular issue to try and achieve a greater good. And I've been exceptionally proud to have been part of that process for the last 2 years. Thanks very much.
Next, I'd like to introduce Ruth Sankowitz Mercer. Ruth used to live here at the Belchertown State School, but hasn't for, I believe, over 10 years. Ruth is a remarkable woman who has cerebral palsy, who uses a wheelchair. She speaks through the aid of a computer. She's the author of a book that has recorded her time here at Belchertown called I Raise My Eyes to Say Yes. I'd like to add a personal note, though, and that is that the weekend prior to my joining this administration, I would have to admit I was somewhat bewildered. How do I prepare to take on the task of becoming a commissioner of a large state agency that has a very solemn responsibility to the people it serves? The way I ended up deciding that I would prepare for these responsibilities is by sitting down and reading Ruth's book. And having done so, because up until then I'd only read sections of it, I realized subsequently in the first few weeks of my being on the job that it was probably the best preparation I could have done, because it helped give me an insight that she had experienced, and that's probably the most important thing I could have done. So let me please introduce Ruth Sankowitz Mercer.
Welcome to Multivoice version 1.1, Basics 1, Alphabet, WP Common, Rest. Basics 1, Alphabet, WP Common, WP Common, WP Speech. Rest. Stop. Stop. Reprieve. Rest. Rest. Menu. Return. DSS. Rest. Stop. Stop. Reprieve. Save. Erase paragraph. Stop. Stop. Close speech. Close speech. Rest. Stop. Close speech. This is one of the happiest days of my life. Perhaps the happiest day of my life was the day I moved out of the Belchertown State School and into my own apartment in Springfield. As I think back to the years I spent here, I feel both sad and angry. I am sad about the many years of living, which were wasted lying around in the infirmary. All of that time could have been spent learning the things we all must learn, from household tasks to daily living skills to the ins and outs of human nature. I am angry that society in those days felt that the only way to deal with people with disabilities was to put us in an institution. I have always wondered why people had to be placed in institutions like the Belchertown State School in the first place. It seems like a cruel and unusual punishment. Both Norman and I are very relieved that this institution is closed. With all of the problems with the state budget and talk of restructuring social programs, we were afraid that we would get shoved back into the state school and lose all of the independence we've struggled so hard to gain. The final closing of this facility means that we do not have to be concerned about that now. We will no longer have to panic when we hear people talking about cutting or changing PCA services. The closing of Belchertown State School is a major step in the direction of better treatment of persons with disabilities, but it's not the final step. The final step is closing all of the doors and throwing away the keys. All institutions like this one need to be shut down so that no one else has to put up with the inhumane treatment we suffered. Former residents of these places deserve some peace of mind. They need to be able to live without the fear of having to move back. These individuals should be given the same opportunities and challenges as those persons who have already left the institutional life behind. They should have a chance to enjoy the same rights as people without disabilities. They haven't committed a crime after all. Everyone deserves a chance at independence. I know that sometimes people in institutions are afraid of what they'll encounter in the outside world. Many of my friends and I were scared about the change at first. People in this position should not be told, as I was once told, that nobody cares whether they live in the community or in an institution. Instead, they should be told that there are plenty of support services for persons with disabilities, plenty of opportunities for happiness, and plenty of new friends to make out in the community. Today is a day of celebration for me. I am so very happy and grateful that I was able to leave the Belchertown State School and to begin to enjoy my life. Now everyone who was living here will have the same opportunity to have a good life. We should celebrate their opportunity.
Thank you, Ruth. Earlier I mentioned the importance of parents in the long, decade-long struggle to improve conditions here at the Belchertown State School, and then to see through this 3-year-long process of phasing down and then closing the state school. I now would like to introduce one of the leaders of the advocacy parents group here in Western Mass, Dr. Ben Richie. I spoke to Ben earlier this week and asked him if he would join us officially today in saying a few words, and also with his many years of struggle, he and I discussed there being a symbolic gift to him from the department. Ben thought of what he thought would be the right symbolism, and so today I have to present to Ben a set of keys that have on it one of the tags that all the employees had to identify that they were an employee, and this was their key. And the symbolism that Ben expressed to me is that we are now returning people to the community and returning them to their neighborhoods and their home communities and returning to the families of people with disabilities. The symbol of control that used to exist. So with that in mind, I present these to Dr. Ben Richie.
I've arrived. before giving a few remarks, I would like to introduce you or recognize certain people. John Hallett. Where is John Hallett? He is the president of our Advocacy Network. Back there, John Hallett, and the rest of the board of directors is right here. These are the people who will keep anyone on an honest road to persistence and make sure you get the job done. Great board of directors. Genuine slaves. Al Warner and Agnes Warner resided at Belchertown, and they worked for years and never earned a penny. And that was one of the complaints we made in federal court. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America says you can't do that. But they did it here. So Al and Agnes, and by the way, Al is one of the people who is responsible for the cemetery on these grounds being first class, being a first-class cemetery. No more numbers. Thanks to Al and Agnes Warner, great friends, living happy. There are so many people I want to recognize, but I've just got to take a couple more. Peter Train, where is the other devil? Here, step out here. That's the man. That's the man that we I'll tell you, the only problem with Peter is he did such a good job that I think these guys in the background want to take him elsewhere, which is unfortunate for us. Peter, thank you so much. And then a couple of people who are not legislators in name only. Senator Stan Rosenberg is here. And Representative Ellen Story is here with him. There are some others. Please help me now because I didn't see them and I don't want to slight anyone. But these people, well, of course, they live in Amherst, which helps. But they're awfully good, concerned, and compassionate people. First off, here are my prepared remarks. I wish to thank Chief Judge of the United States District Court, presiding in Boston, Joseph L. Toro. He's presided over Richie versus Greenblatt since early 1973 when he came on grounds and saw the degradation, the warehouse, the pig pen. Without his compassion and his persistence, I doubt if we would be standing here today. That is, knowing how the Commonwealth moves very slowly. I would also be remiss if I didn't extend thanks to our great, compassionate attorney, Beryl Cohen. He was always available when we needed him, and we needed him so many times. And he will never be paid what he justifiably deserves. I wish to thank Health and Human Services Secretary Charles Baker for, among other things, venturing from Boston to the eastern border of western Massachusetts. I request that he carry back to Fortress Boston that we are a friendly but determined people who believe in and diligently practice citizen empowerment. And I also wish to thank Commissioner Philip Campbell, as well as his Deputy Commissioner, Fred Misselow, and his Assistant Commissioner, Dr. Mary Cerrito, is here. She is right here. They are the triad who's leading this new department. And let me say I have great faith. The only problem is they've inherited such a mess that I don't think they know where to start. But maybe someday soon they will clear it up. Just don't dump it in Boston Harbor. These are the people who are today symbolically going to close this place, this institution, which was euphemistically and fraudulently called a state school. It was neither. It was needed. And I thank the commissioner for having awarded me a key to this place. Watch me move. I really accept it on behalf of all members of Advocacy Network, as well as in the memory of all persons with mental retardation who once resided here. A key, by fundamental definition, simple definition, the things that I like to talk about, simple things, is an instrument for locking and unlocking something. Had it not been invented previously, it would have had to be invented for the agency called the Department of Mental Health, later called the Department of Mental Retardation. How could they operate without keys? The key was and is a powerful symbol. Buildings were kept locked, ostensibly for the benefit of the residents. And the funny thing is, they thought that we believed that nonsense. To us, the key is a powerful symbol, especially when it's in the hands of persons with mental retardation who live in community settings. Whether state or vendor operated, employees must realize that although they carry keys, they must act and perform as guests in the homes of persons with mental retardation. Guests. The temptation to deliver a Fidel Castro-length address is great. Many years that I've been involved with this damn place. But I will end by noting that today is in fact a joyous day. All class members have now departed. The last three having left last Thursday afternoon in a very moving few moments. However, this is less a matter of closing in celebration than a change of address, as well as a clear and strong reminder, which I'm sure will be conveyed by Secretary Baker, to the Governor, William Weld, of the Commonwealth's obligation to provide quality, lifetime services. And we, primarily, parents and guardians especially, will judge the quality of those services. Beginning today, Advocacy Network will not double, but will triple its efforts to ensure that this administration, notably the Governor, Secretary Baker, Commissioner Campbell, that the federal court-gained obligation must be fulfilled. I thank you all, friends. Thank you for being here.
That draws to an end the prepared remarks that we had. If there's one or two other people that might want to take the opportunity to make a couple of comments, that's possible. If that's not the case, we will move on to locking the front door. Let me, oh, Jim? I thought so.
Basically, it's not good enough just to have people out in the community. They must be a part of the community, and they must be made to make their own decisions. This is a historic day, and if we can close Belchertown State School down, we can close the rest of them down. But people must be made to feel a part of the community. And once they're out there, the cuts have got to stop because a lot of the community programs have been cut back in staffing. I'm calling today for those cuts to be restored, and the people that are working in the community must be remembered. They're working for the people in the home, not just for the state. And all the money that they spend in this place, if there's any left over, that should go to help the residents out in the community. Also, if the place is sold or any of the land sold, that should be put into a fund to help the residents of the Belchertown State School. And I think people out in the community should welcome the people with open arms. The people in the neighborhoods, get to know the people. Just don't pretend that they're not there. Otherwise, this isn't going to do any good. And people out in the community must realize they're there to serve the people. Thank you very much. And this is
there's one more person who's going to say a couple of words. Bob Rydell for the Arc of Mass. Riedel, excuse me.
Indeed, this is a very happy occasion. I'm a parent. I'm a board member of the Arc of Massachusetts, and we are just so delighted that Belchertown State School is now empty of people that did reside there in the past. There still are three more state schools, Denver being an important one that we would like to see experience the same situation. There are also three large centers. So I joined with Tim in repeating the same sort of thing, that we're interested in what will happen out in the community and see that services are provided both to the people that leave the institutions and those that have always lived in the community. Thank you.
Issue of partnership. As a state agency that's been very involved in the development of homes, the physical homes themselves in the community settings, and that's the Department of Community, DCP&O is who they are. Capital Planning and Operations, thank you. And specifically, Richard LaRue, for DCP&O is here today to join us, and is going to join us in locking the door of the administration building. But I wanted to take a moment just to express the department's appreciation to both Richard and to Commissioner Smith, who was not able to join us today, because DCP&O has been instrumental in assisting, actually in doing the work for the department to provide the physical environments, the small, regular kind of homes that have been developed here in Western Mass and in southern Worcester County for the people from Belchertown when they moved out into the community. So now if you join with me, Secretary Baker and I are going to lock the front door and hand the keys over to DCP&O.
I'm just going to take notes.
Okay, good. That's why I just signed it. Take pictures of theirs. A little chilly.
I'm surviving. You look about I can't even imagine. Before any of that happened. I had the surgery and I was at I looked at all that, I do all the papers when it costs so down.